The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Monday, November 14th, 2022. Thank you so much for joining me. I am back from Mississippi, where I spent quite a bit of time in Gulfport assisting with the investigation and the attempt to get justice on behalf of 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan. I will fill you in more about the progress of that journey towards the end of today's episode. I just wanted to let you all know that one of my goals is to return to the daily format of the podcast, the half-hour public podcast that you'll be able to download from anywhere you download podcasts. And then the full podcast will be available to patrons at patreon.com/the BPD show. Today is going to be a longer episode, so let's jump right into it. The midterms have come and gone, and there was no red wave. The Democrats were able to hang on to the majority, a slim majority in the Senate, despite the runoff election that's coming up in the state of Georgia, where Raphael Warnock is going to have to face off again with Herschel Walker. No surprise there in terms of how many white evangelicals lined up. I believe it was 88% lined up to support Herschel Walker, who is like Donald Trump, nothing like Jesus. However, that doesn't stop white evangelicals from expressing their Christian nationalism and using a person like Herschel Walker to try to cover and give them racial cover. But that's a whole nother conversation. Mark Kelly pulled out a victory in the state of Arizona and defeating Blake Masters. And finally, over the weekend, Catherine Cortez Masto pulled out a victory in that state. Also in Arizona, it looks as though the gubernatorial race, in which Carrie Lake, who is one of the most vocal Donald Trump election denier, QAnon conspiracy theorist to run, it looks like she is not going to win. It looks like the Democrats are going to hold on to the entire state of Arizona as well as Nevada. And so there's a lot of great things that are happening in that regard. We managed to hold the line. That's the great thing. Democrats held the line. I say we inclusively because in this fight between the duopoly, between two major parties, you have to pick the one that's not fascist. It's really simple. And while there are a lot of people who fancy themselves to be leftists who decide to throw down their arms and just throw up their hands and, in a way, indirectly support the fascist by declaring that there's no difference between the two parties or saying things like there is no lesser evil, they're both evil. I'm glad to know that the normal people, also known as normies, did what they had to do to protect democracy from a clear fascist threat. And I say all that to say this, the threat is not gone yet. The threat is most certainly not gone. The House of Representatives is as close as it has ever been. I believe we're looking at a 218 to 217 kind of split. When the dust settles, we don't know who is going to hold the House. There are some pollsters who believe the Democrats are going to pull it out. Fine. But when you look at the comparison between the agenda of, let's say milquetoast liberals, right? Let's use the derogatory language of some of my former comrades who look at the liberals in power and think that they're good for nothing. Okay. Now look at their quote unquote good for nothing agenda compared to the fascists, who are literally seeking to overthrow democracy for the sake of their religious dogma, for the sake of their egos, and for the sake of not wanting to use pronouns. This is not to say that the victory is won. It's to say that we simply held the line. So congratulations to the United States of America, because in what could have been a very dark hour, the last thing we needed to do was to turn over the Senate to these Republicans, and certainly not the Senate and the House, because they have made it clear that they will stop at nothing from consolidating power. It's not good enough to have a neoliberal economic system, one that puts billions of dollars into all of their hands. Let's just be clear. Everybody in Washington, D.C. is getting rich. The elite across the board are getting obscenely rich while the workers of this country are being ground to dust. That hasn't changed. But you will notice that that is insufficient for the fascist arm of the Republican Party. It's not enough for them to have all of the wealth. We are dealing with a faction of people who want to literally control every aspect of your life down to what goes on in your bedroom. And it's not just what happens in your bedroom. We're dealing with theocratic fascists who literally want to control and force you to become their specific type of Christian. Now, when you juxtapose the quote unquote milquetoast liberals who aren't doing enough for workers. Now, that last part, I definitely agree, right? They aren't doing enough for workers. They're not doing enough for marginalized groups. But when you compare them to what has been coming out in full-forced declarations of outright fascism, I think it's a pretty good day that we were able to hold the line against the fascists. But the battle is not over. They are regrouping, and in the midst of their regrouping, what we expected to happen is now happening. They're starting to turn on Donald Trump. I want to play a clip or two. The first clip is going to be from former Vice President Mike Pence, who had an interview on ABC recently over the weekend and has come out against Donald Trump, but in a very unique way. He's coming out as a victim of Donald Trump on January 6th. Take a listen.
Barricaded inside the House chamber. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of it all, you can see that the president has tweeted. 2:24 p.m., the president tweets, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done.
It angered me, but I turned to my daughter who was standing nearby, and I said, it doesn't take courage to break the law. It takes courage to uphold the law. I mean, the president's words were reckless. It was clear he decided to be part of the problem.
Now, what's not included in that clip is the fact that he said that former Vice President Mike Pence made it clear that Donald Trump put his life and the life of his family in danger. Fox News has also turned on Donald Trump. Headline after headline coming from Fox News. Anchor after anchor is turning. They are rather turning on Donald Trump. Rupert Murdoch has shifted his entire regime to oppose Donald Trump, and they have thrown in their lot with Ron DeSantis. It has saturated all the way down to the bottom feeders like Candace Owens. Here she is on the Daily Wire turning on Donald Trump.
And this got back to me that he was upset with me, that he was angry at me. And the next time that I saw him, he was quite rude to me. He was actually rude to me. I'm telling you this personal story because I think it is something that's unacceptable. That is not being a leader. That is not owning things that you did wrong. That is not owning that you misunderstood something about your base. That's not growing. That's not developing. Where he doesn't trust anybody. Where he doesn't listen to anybody. Where he's almost likely to believe that everybody's trying to turn their back on him and stab him in the back. And I think that the MAGA movement is reflecting Trump. I think there is a trepidation that I'm sensing in Trump. And I think that trepidation is evidenced by him taking a random swing at DeSantis last week. I don't think it was helpful, even though DeSantis won Florida handily. He's not running against DeSantis right now. Right? DeSantis is running for governor. I know Trump voted for him and all of that's great. Why take a random swing?
Well, we understand the nature of that random swing was not random at all. Ron DeSantis has been posturing himself to run in 2024, and Donald Trump's only hope for his future is to try to win the presidency again in 2024. So we are expecting a full-on civil war, which has already commenced. The only question is Ron DeSantis smart enough to not engage in the kind of mudslinging that Donald Trump engages in so very successfully? But I'm hoping that Ron DeSantis is as ignorant as we think he is, because I'm looking forward to Republicans tearing themselves apart. Candace Owens has now been attacked by so many of the Make America Great Again movement. So this is shaping up to be a full-blown internal civil war amongst the fascists. And what do we do when we see something like that? We sit back and we let them fight. And if we can egg it on, we egg it on even more. Because neither Ron DeSantis nor Donald Trump needs to be in power. People like Candace Owens, Mike Pence, the entire cabal, there are no redeemable Republicans who have sat by over the last 5 or 6 years and empowered Donald Trump to move this democracy to the brink of utter disaster, complete and total implosion. None of these people should be in power. None of them should have platforms. But the way our system is set up, the billionaires pour money into this specific cabal because this cabal, they are willing to relinquish any type of tax. I mean, it really does boil down simply to money. The fact that Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, all of them, the oligarchs in this country don't care which one of those guys win because they understand that either one of those guys is going to cut their tax liability to this country, responsibility to this country down even more. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a well-financed group of theocratic fascists, billionaire oligarchs, and all of the flunkies who get crumbs off the table. And when I say crumbs, in this case, we are talking about millions of dollars. I mean, Candace Owens is a millionaire now. So that's where we are. That's where the election has left us. There's still a few races that have not been finalized in terms of the count. A lot of mail-in ballots. Some states have laws that do not allow the mail-in ballots to be counted until Election Day. Other states have the exact opposite. As mail-in ballots come in, they count them, and so they're able to report those mail-in ballots on election night. And so election in the United States of America has turned from election night to election week, and sometimes even election month. And that's okay, so long as every vote is counted. But where we stand right now, the country is completely and totally divided electorally. Electorally, we're completely divided. And this is not because Republicans actually have a plurality even. It's because Republicans and the conservative Supreme Court and the various conservative governors across the country have baked in voter suppression, gerrymandering districts. I mean, Florida is completely red now, not because it is a Republican state, but because the congressional maps that were put forward by the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, completely eliminated black districts, neutralizing black power in the state of Florida. And of course, we have the fiasco of what happened in New York. We'll go over that. But the deal is this, folks. The fight is far from over. And while we are getting ready to enter into a civil war in the Republican Party, which will do a significant amount of damage, we can't take our eye off the ball. We can't take our eye off of their goal. Their goal is clear. They want to end democracy because democracy has been, they being Republicans, conservatives in the United States of America, want and are seeking, actively working to end democracy because democracy is inconvenient to them. They cannot obtain power legitimately through democracy, and so they are doing everything they can to usurp it. And we only have a few months to literally chase these traitors out of all of our institutions. And if we are unable to organize on the local level to overcome the hurdles that have been put in place by the Republican Party and that the Democratic Party has slept on, this is not to say that 100% of our problems in this country is the result of the Republican Party. It's also due to a negligent Democratic Party that allowed the Republicans to get this far because they trusted in the institutions. They believed more in the filibuster than they do democracy. We can't forget the Kirsten Sinemas and the Joe Manchins, who themselves have been hostile towards progress in this country, using their platforms to be complete impediments to progress. And so we have to hold everyone accountable where they are culpable, and we have to keep our eye on the ball. Because democracy, that's what's on the line. And we have no time left to play with the enemies of democracy. You can tell a tree by the fruit it bears. You can tell an agenda by the results that it gets. When you are a billionaire, the richest man in the world, at least he was before he lost $100 billion since purchasing Twitter, Elon Musk has enough money to have enough people around him to accomplish his goals. So I want to frame this conversation about the end result of what's happening to Twitter in the context of Elon Musk knows exactly what he's doing. I know a chaos agent when I see one. I've had the unfortunate privilege of having to work with a few in my lifetime. People who come into organizations with the express purpose of destroying it because of what that organization represents and what that organization has accomplished or can accomplish. I know a chaos agent when I see one. Elon Musk is a chaos agent, and he has been sent with $44 billion with the aid of investors from Saudi Arabia to destroy Twitter. Because all of the chaos that has ensued in less than 2 weeks has not yielded a single positive benefit, not only for the platform, but even for Elon Musk's bottom line. And what are some of the chaos? I don't know if all of you are on Twitter or have been keeping up with it. The verification process, which Elon Musk lambasted as a tool of the elite to create a hierarchy that benefits the elite journalists, all of that language. That's what he used to justify overhauling the verification process and attaching an $8 a month subscription fee to get a blue check mark. Well, that move has cost corporations billions of dollars, who I'm not going to cry over. I think Lockheed Martin got hit with a fake account that said that that tweeted out that they were no longer going to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia or the United States, causing the value of that company to decline sharply. They lost billions of dollars in their market cap. Same thing happened with pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly, the manufacturers of insulin. There was a fake tweet sent out by a fake account that received the $8 a month Twitter Blue subscription check mark. And that fake tweet said that they were going to no longer charge for insulin and that insulin would be free. That cost them, I don't know how many billions of dollars in their valuation. Those companies have now subsequently pulled all of their advertising from Eli Lilly, specifically from Twitter. In order to stop the hemorrhaging, it was announced over the weekend that SpaceX is going to or has purchased a large volume of ads. They are now an official sponsor of Twitter. We'll see how that plays out in terms of longevity and worth to SpaceX. But it has not been a good weekend, a good 2 weeks rather. It's been a very rapid decline on Twitter. And I have to say that that's the point, folks. One of the things that I faced, the challenges that we faced in Gulfport, Mississippi, was the inability to get critical mass across social media to bring attention to the issue. Facebook specifically, I mentioned to you, restricted the accounts of every single person involved. Now, my accounts have already been limited. Most people say they can't see any of my posts, and I don't do a lot of complaining about it because, well, that's just the lay of the land. It's just one more monster that we have to overcome. But that said, social media companies have already recognized the power that they hold over the masses' ability to organize and how those platforms have been used over the last decade specifically to be the backbone of large mass movements for justice. The Arab Spring was probably one of the first mass movements that leveraged Twitter in a very significant fashion. And then, of course, we saw the George Floyd protest and everything that happened in between. It makes absolute sense that if you are a regime that wants to protect and insulate itself from a mass movement that can be organized on Twitter, to just get rid of Twitter. And that's one of the results of Elon Musk. I mean, we're not seeing Twitter improve. The tools are breaking. He has fired the vast majority of employees. He's even firing the contractors. 4,000 of 5,000 contractors who helped maintain Twitter were released over the weekend, along with so many other staff members that do critical things. Security. Lead executives and entire teams that were charged with providing user security have been let go. And now we're left with the whims of Elon Musk as he uses his time to troll Democratic candidates and Democratic politicians. I mean, literally, you can see his time is being spent sharing propaganda, sharing conspiracy theories, and trying to ratio politicians like Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts. So it's hard for me to, I mean, don't get me wrong. I 100% love to engage in the idea that Elon Musk is really just not smart. But we know in this country, on this planet, you don't have to be smart. You just have to have money, and you have to have the illusion that you're smart, right? I do believe that Elon Musk is genuinely at his core a moron. But that would also kind of undermine the reality of what's happening. One of the most critical tools for organizing that has ever hit this planet is being undermined by a man who had enough money and enough other investors, namely the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to purchase it and to just demolish it, to prevent our ability to connect. And I love this. There was a tweet that he sent out saying, he purchased Twitter under the auspices of free speech, but he made it clear that having freedom of speech is not the same as having freedom of reach. That was his precise words. Freedom of speech is not the same as freedom of reach, which made it clear that he is absolutely going to limit the ability of certain characters, certain users, to reach their audiences. And I never really talk about this because it always comes off as being a spoiled sport. Oh, you're mad because you don't have the kind of reach that you. Well, there it is, folks. As you look at key players who have had the ability to use that platform. I mean, I'm seeing people with millions of subscribers or followers on Twitter have reach of like 10. And that's because Elon Musk has made it clear what he is trying to do. Elon Musk has purchased Twitter for his political agenda, and his political agenda aligns with the likes of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, aligns with the likes of Peter Thiel, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump. And this is something that I called out a long time ago. I was at a studio session with some folks, and I dropped this one particular bar about Elon Musk, and they could not understand, Ben, why are you going after Elon Musk? He's such a cool tech guy. He's such a cool tech bro. Well, now they have since texted me and realized, oh my God, you were right. Yeah. Not that I have to be right, but it really goes to show you that you have to listen to people when they say key things. People will let you know what road they're going down because they'll float a trial balloon years in advance. Years in advance. They will let you know the alliance that they want to ally with, and they will do it by subtly moving there, slowly but surely. But in this case, he has now jumped the shark. He has been saddled with $44 billion of an investment that, honestly, it looks like he might have enough money just to destroy it. And what happens then? Well, you have neutralized one of the greatest tools for connecting and organizing that we have had ever. It cannot be overstated the way that Twitter has been used for revolutionary movements. Whether those movements were successful in the long run, that's dependent on that individual movement. But we can see historically that Twitter has been one of the best tools for organizers to find each other and people of like mind to find each other and to create new coalitions that move at the speed of information. And that is a dangerous thing to regimes like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Hell, it's a dangerous thing to the United States of America, why now we see these social media companies being in bed with the police state, having the ability to micro-target individual users to prevent core information from going out and getting critical mass. Namely, the most recent example is one that I experienced myself in the Gulfport, Mississippi, with the ability to neutralize the reach of every single organizer on the ground. It's not just happening on Facebook. We see it now happening on Twitter. And I have to say, that's the point. The point was never for him to purchase Twitter to make it better. It was for him to purchase Twitter to be his own little playground while destroying our ability to organize.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
Here we go. A very special thank you and welcome to all of our newest patrons. Shout out to Melissa Murphy. Thank you for becoming a patron. Glenn Karen Murray. Thank you for becoming a patron. Lane Zinneman. Thank you for becoming a patron. Kevin Thompson, thank you also for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you'll get full access to the entire episode, no commercials, and you'll get access to our patron parties that happens twice a month. DJ Exclusive is always there, and the patron family is there turning up and having a good time. That's patreon.com/The BPD Show. And we'll be back right after this break.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Last but not least, I want to move to an international story. Ukraine, obviously, we've been following it since the invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. Over the week, this past week, Ukrainian forces liberated yet another city, Kherson, and we have seen numerous images of families, grandmothers coming out celebrating. There's even there's a video of an elderly lady who hid the Ukrainian flag. She buried it in a package underneath a cinder block, and she dug it out as the Ukrainian liberators marched through the city and they raised the flag of Ukraine. This is not a good time for Vladimir Putin. Inside of Russia, the forces that supported him in the launch of the war have grown weary with the embarrassment that has come as a result of loss after loss of occupied cities, of military personnel, of military equipment. It has been one embarrassment after the other for Vladimir Putin. And even now, one of his allies in the country, I guess you can't call him an ally anymore, has made an allusion to Vladimir Putin paying with his life because of his failures. And it was an artistic allusion in a letter released by one of his former colleagues by the name of Dugin. Made an allusion towards a literary piece where the leader paid with his life. It's not a good time to be Vladimir Putin, which is not really the best of situations for Ukraine either, because we're going to see Vladimir Putin do everything he can possibly do to win, despite the fact that it is clear that he is outmatched and outgunned short of nuclear weapons. And so while there are many celebrations that are happening in Ukraine and across the entire nation, and quite frankly, across the entire West, we have to be mindful that Vladimir Putin is going to be the most dangerous as the threat to his own personal safety that comes from hardliners in Russia. As he no longer is safe, he's going to become even more dangerous Now, this is not to say that the Ukrainians or Zelensky should turn course. No, they have to do whatever they have to do to preserve and protect their homeland. And we've had this conversation, but I just want to say it again on this episode. It is the height of absurdity, hypocrisy, and cowardice for anyone to suggest that the Ukrainians should have just rolled over and allowed Vladimir Putin to come in and to pillage and plunder, maim and destroy, commit war crimes, rape and murder simply because they don't like the United States of America. And as absurd as that sentence sounds, that's where we are. There's an entire faction that a coalition. There's a global coalition that has been arguing since the beginning of this war that Ukraine should surrender as a means of getting peace. And their reason and their justification was because the United States is bad, because the West is bad. They really honestly argued, and it's really one of the more surprising things that I've encountered. These arguments have been coming from people who formerly called themselves colleagues, leftists, people who fancy themselves to be anti-war. They have been arguing that the way to peace was to surrender to the butcher of Bukhara, to the man who commits the offenses. And I just want to make sure that I have on the record every time I speak about this, that appeasement is not peace. Appeasement is not peace. It's cowardice. And it allows yourself to later on to become even more so of a victim. We've seen that historically. And yet you have people who look at you with a straight face, use their platforms from Tulsi Gabbard down to bottom feeders like Jimmy Dore to declare that the road towards peace was to give Vladimir Putin exactly what he wanted, which was the right to go in and to invade a sovereign nation and to murder the forces, the people, the citizenry. Now, it didn't work out too well for Vladimir Putin, as we see. His troops were not as good as his propaganda. His military strategy was not as good as his propaganda. His armament was not as good as his propaganda. And the people who supported his war efforts from Russia, they're starting to turn on him. And that's a good thing. Listen, I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the patrons only half coming up after this musical break. Thank you so much for supporting the show while I was away. My effort now is to get you a podcast on a daily basis. That's going to be my very best effort. I'm going to try my very best to do that in the midst of all the organizing that's still going on. We are still organizing with churches, and I've absolutely loved the responses that we've been getting. A lot of churches have really sunk their teeth into fighting back against Christian nationalism. And I hope that you will start seeing the actual results of that pretty soon. And we're still going to be on the ground, going back and forth to different cities, working with organizers on cases like Jaheim McMillan. We'll discuss that in the next half. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show to get the full episode without any advertisements. And if not, I will see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.